The Lewes Marsh Variable Retention Harvesting Study is a long-term research project focusing on the Lewes Marsh area about 35 kilometers south of Whitehorse. This project is a joint initiative of the Yukon's Department of Energy, Mines and Resources and Department of Environment. Robin Sharples is a research forester at the Yukon's Forest Management Branch, and she's been coordinating the project for several years.
Variable retention timber harvesting is a silviculture technique where some of the trees get left behind intentionally during timber harvesting for ecological purposes. In this study, we are seeing how variable retention harvesting affects the growth of caribou lichen in the Southern Lakes area.
The preliminary work on this study began in 2009, and the initial work involved gathering baseline data about vegetation in the Lewes Marsh area. The researchers are interested in the lichen species that form an important part of the diet of the mountain caribou who frequent this area in the winter. Aldo van Eyck is a development forester with the Yukon's Forest Management Branch.
We were collecting the baseline data before the next phase of the project came in, which was the harvesting. So basically we wanted to make sure that we had a good handle on exactly what level of lichen growth was present on the ground, as well as just the vegetation that's present in the site.
Design of Phase 2 of the project was done by the University of Northern British Columbia. Darwin Coxon is a professor in the Ecosystem Science and Management program at UNBC and worked on the design of Phase 2.
We've been studying caribou habitat, and in particular lichens, which are a major food source for caribou, for over 20 years now. A big part of our research has been, what is the impact of forest harvesting? Sometimes forest harvesting can have a negative impact on caribou, can remove critical winter habitat, but we've been particularly interested on how partial cut harvesting, how selective thinning of forests can be used to increase the amount of forage for caribou and perhaps extend the amount of time that they can stay in a given forest as critical winter habitat. That's been a major theme of our work with the Forest Management Branch in the southern Yukon.
The study area is 27 hectares in size, and the work involves harvesting pine and spruce trees in 3 blocks of boreal forest. The objective is to determine whether the density of tree removal will impact ground lichen growth in the long term and how that might affect the food supplies of caribou in their winter ranges. Darwin Coxon says the Lewes Marsh area has the right conditions to test the impacts of tree harvesting on lichen growth. He says research on caribou habitat can provide valuable data about forest use in a region where there are varying demands for both human and wildlife use.
The Carcross caribou herd has seen many changes to the landscape it lives in. Both humans changing the forest by taking trees out, but also the forest growing older in areas that formerly had lots of food for caribou no longer doing so. That's one of the major conceptual ideas behind the harvesting trial, is that in some areas, by thinning the forest partly, you may be able to set the clock back. You may be able to provide the lichens with a growing environment similar to that of 30 or 40 years ago, in effect providing a longer period when there's more food for the caribou. But it's important that you do this in the right locations. If you do it in locations that are too dry, there will be no influence. If you do it in locations that are too wet, it won't work.
We're here on site to check on Bear Creek logging to see how they're doing. At the moment, they are finished block 1. So they are just finishing up block 2, and we're going to go check and see how they're doing.
The logging was designed for scientific study. It was laid out in order to kind of measure the effects of canopy reduction on the growth of lichen for caribou. They had a group go through and paint 1/3 of all the trees in selected strips in the bush, and we've gone through, and in one area we've removed 1/3 of all the trees, and the other area we've left all the painted trees, and then there's a control, and there's 3 blocks laid out like that. So all the harvesting was done with a line skidder and chainsaws and pulling out the wood pieces at a time.
All the wood from block 1 and block 2 has now made its way to this landing. Most of it, as you can see, is smaller diameter wood. The smaller diameter wood will be dried and used for firewood, which is a big commodity in Whitehorse, as well as the bigger spruce. Most of the bigger diameter wood is spruce, and that will probably be sought up for cants that will be sold locally to the local market.
The boreal forest in southern Yukon is home to several species of ground lichen. Val Lowen is a habitat coordinator with Yukon's Environment Department, and she says these lichen represent an important food source for the mountain caribou in the area.
The caribou spend most of their year actually up in the alpine, and that's where they have their calves, and that's where they breed. But as the snow continues to deepen over the winter, they're driven down slope and into the forests in the valley bottoms, and their primary food in winter is lichen. The open pine forests are quite dry, the soils are coarse textured. They have a lot of lichen, and those are the areas that the caribou tend to need in the winter time. And so they move through their winter range, traveling to all these different pine lichen stands.
The Departments of Energy, Mines and Resources and Environment view the study as an opportunity to collaborate. This research could have important implications for caribou and for forest planning and forest management. John Ryder is the Manager of Environmental Affairs at the Department of Environment.
Reviewing forestry projects in the past, there's probably been some speculation about what the impacts of those forestry activities might be on caribou and caribou habitat. And this really allowed us an opportunity to take that science-based approach and explore what might be going on from that perspective and document it in a more rigorous way than had been done in the past.
One of the important outcomes of this project is that it'll be able to assist with planning where future forest harvesting should occur and where it shouldn't occur in areas of the Carcross caribou herd winter range. The caribou herds, we have to plan where they will find food into the future. Where will they be eating in 30 years' time, in 50 years' time? And we have to remember that the forests are getting older, there will be natural fires. Additional human impacts have to take all of that into consideration. Our partial cutting trial may be able to give us some answers as to, well, here's some areas where if you need to do forest harvesting, it would be the best place to do it, and it would improve future caribou habitat availability.
As part of Phase 2 of the Variable Retention Study, the team from EMR and Environment will be conducting post-harvest assessments. The first set of post-harvest measurements will occur in the summer of 2016. These measurements will provide a reference point for comparing future changes in the study area's vegetation.